Viewers, in the first half of this show, you heard Shamika Ravi breaking down the data set which seems to suggest that the NDA's economic performance in comparison to the UPA's economic performance across all parliamentary constituencies and about 800 districts of this country has been better. Now viewers, if you take this data together with other macroeconomic indices like the GDP growth rate, real and nominal, you look at India's GDP growth rate in comparison to some of the world's biggest economies, you will notice that the buoyancy reflected in Shamika Ravi's PMEAC data is also echoed across these indices. And of course, there are several other data sets which we have brought to your notice and which you will see flashing on the side of your screens. The question that we are going to ask our panel now is whether the debate has been settled in favor of the NDA after what you saw in part 1 of this program. And of course, on the back of all the other data indicators that have been brought to our attention over the last few weeks, including of course the white paper. And to discuss this, to debate this, to maybe even settle the debate once and for all, we are joined by Dr. Guru Prakash Paswan, National Spokesperson of the BJP, Rajiv Desai, author, Indian Business Culture, SC Garg, former Finance Secretary of the GOI, and PK Basu, Senior Economist. Let me first begin with SC Garg, former Finance Secretary of the GOI. Mr. Garg, now whichever way you cut this data, it appears that a lot of work has gone in during the NDA years, and the NDA has made a material difference to the economy in the positive direction as well as, of course, people's lives.
Oh, you asking my comment on that?
Yes, sir. That is the conclusion that this data set seems to arrive at.
So Rahul, I have not seen this data set, what Shamika Ravi might have presented. The data set is still not available to us. So I can't comment on what confirmation that data set, but I did look at the white paper which the finance minister presented to the parliament, and there was some sort of debate. And I've been making sort of commentary on the state of the economy, the reforms and all. So broadly speaking, I'll speak from that perspective. So if you need to take up the growth situation first, my broad conclusion is that NDA first with about 6.7% growth was a very high growth period. Then in the NDA second, the first 2 years were terrible. The first year growth was only 3.7%. And in the second year, the pandemic year, there was actually a contraction of 5.8%. But for the last 3 years, we have had excellent growth momentum, and the rate of 7% plus in 1 year, about 9% in another year, and this year is estimated at about 7.6%. But if you take the 5 years growth for the... Sorry?
Okay, someone just made a comment.
This year is 8.2%.
8.2%.
No.
PK Basu is informing us today.
23-24 growth is 7.6% estimated. What has come out 8.2% is for 9 months. For the year, the NSO has given 7.6%.
Yeah, it's a revised upward estimate of 7.6%. Okay, yeah. Let's make your point, sir, please.
So the point is that for 5 years taken together, including the two poor years of the past, the growth for 5 years is only 4.3%. So first 5 years, excellent 6.7%. Second 5-year term, not very good at all at 4.3%. If you compare it with the UPA period, the UPA period first term had the growth record of over 7%, which was one of the outstanding phase, carrying on
Not true.
from the last 2 years of the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government.
Okay.
The second 5-year was we had policy paralysis, we had many other things. UPA's luck also went down. So at that time, this growth was about 5.3, 5.4%. So in both terms, it's curious that the average growth of the UPA term turns out to be higher than the growth of the NDA terms.
But the government has been able to keep prices in check, and this data captured through satellite imagery during the daylight hours, not night time, because as you know, you can literally be blinded by the light, given the fact that now you have more and more LED lighting, so you can be misled about total built-up surface development. This data is irrefutable. It is captured by satellite imagery that focuses on square yard areas of less than 10 square feet, in fact. So it really goes down to the ground. It's been cross-verified. And what it tells you is that the distribution of annualized growth rate of total built up surface across parliamentary constituencies is 18% more during the NDA epoch than the UPA era. 18% more, and that's the graph which is on your screens, viewers. And it also tells you that many more parliamentary constituencies have seen more rapid built up surface growth, area growth. So you also have a larger number of parliamentary constituencies falling in the Hindi heartland, which have shown even 10% growth. And very significantly, it is in these areas where, and if you see the map, where you will see in the plates, the Hindi heartland states are the ones which have shown a large amount of growth in terms of built up surface area. And these are some of the states like Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Jharkhand, etc. Even Gujarat, and of course pockets of Bihar, especially Western Bihar, which have seen a lot of this growth. Also, you will see another particular data set which suggests that the government has not just worked for the upper 5% of the population, but also the lower 5% of the population, because if you look at the relationship between predicted growth rates and the proportion of built up surface area to total area of parliamentary constituencies, it is the ones where there was hardly any development in the past, some of the remotest areas that have actually gone up. So it busts also that narrative that the government is a suit boot sarkar. So that's the basic picture that is appearing. Now, senior economist P.K. Basu, you have a few quibbles with S.C. Garg. You were challenging him on his numbers, etc. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think it's very clear. In terms of growth, the first NDA term, first Modi term, growth was faster than any previous 5-year prime ministerial term. Much faster, in fact, than the UPA one. If you include 2003, the last year of the Vajpayee government, then 2003 to 2007 were the 5 fastest years ever. But that isn't the full UPA term. That includes 1 year of Vajpayee. So if you include just the period from May 2004 to May 2009, well, you'll have to basically start from April. So April 2004 to March 2009, that period growth was slower than in the first Modi term. The second Modi term, of course, has included the COVID pandemic, which was a global phenomenon, and India, of course, had a contraction that year. But if you if you include that, then of course the 5-year average growth of the second term was less even than the second UPA term. But I think it's inappropriate to include the COVID period, which was a global pandemic, and India also, of course, suffered extreme consequences. But the growth of the 3-year period since, you had 9.7, 7, and year to date this year is 8.2%. The estimate of the CSO is 7.6, but that is almost certainly going to be revised up. It's likely to be about 8% at least for the current fiscal year. So the point is that if you exclude the COVID year, which was an unusual year, very unusual, it affected the whole world, the growth momentum that the economy now has is substantially greater than it had in 2013-14, and the main reason for that is that the macroeconomic fundamentals are substantially better now. Every time in the past, every time going back 75 years, every time we've grown faster, we've always run into classic overheating problems of very high inflation and a big current account deficit. Right now, the current account is close to surplus. The current account deficit in the current fiscal year is likely to be less than 0.5% of GDP.
Okay.
Inflation is moderating. It's likely to come down to around the 4% mark by the second quarter of the calendar year. And therefore, you actually have this momentum that is now evident of 8.2% growth almost certainly is going to herald even faster growth ahead. Now, in terms of what you point to, Shamika Ravi's analysis, I think it's important to understand that most social services were unavailable. So financial inclusion is one of the huge achievements. I don't think it can be captured through satellite imagery, but financial inclusion, I think, is the greatest achievement of this government. The fact that almost all households now have access to a bank account and they are able to receive benefits directly into those bank accounts has actually had a transformative social impact across the country. The last 50 or 60% of households that did not have access to a bank account as of April 2014 now do, and that has been transformative. I mean, let's not have two opinions about this.
Okay.
This is really financial inclusion. I think is the greatest achievement of this government, and as a consequence of that, the greatest government has been able to reach the last person far better than any previous government has been able to.
So let me bring in Rajiv Desai. Mr. Desai, are we therefore just seeing opposition for the sake of opposition? Raghuram Rajan, for example, more than a year ago, in an interview to Rahul Gandhi, said there will never be, in the next year, growth beyond 5% at all. There's just no basic, he used a superlative. He said you mark my words, we will never touch 5% again. And here we are sitting at 8 plus in Q3. So what do you make of this reflexive sort of rejection of data?
Well, first of all, I agree with Professor Rajan that there's need to do a hard look at the figures and not just use it as some sort of a propaganda vehicle. The fact of the matter is that in December 2022, the unemployment rate nearly hit 8%, which makes it one of the highest in the world. Now, and we all know just from looking out as you walk along the streets or drive along the streets, that there's a visible increase in poverty. There's a wonderful station in South Delhi, metro station. It was the pride of everybody's pride because it was a brand new station. It gave connectivity and all that. And just a few years later, the entire tracks below it are full of slums. people running about without proper attire, without proper food, shelter, nothing. So, it's one thing to speak from a script, and the script being this prime minister has achieved miracles. If he had achieved miracles, my hat should be off to him. But the fact of the matter is that there are no jobs. I know that for a fact. I run a company, there are no jobs. And we know how many people apply for one single job. You also saw those amazing pictures of a station in Uttar Pradesh where overcrowded because there were people trying to get to this place where there were jobs. So, please at least have some respect for those of us who do not agree with this and who also understand the economy. Don't just try to pull the wool over us. Deception, digression, these have been the watchwords of this regime. The truth is that unemployment rate is highest in the world. The GDP per capita is number 131 in the world. So what are we talking about? Be serious, for heaven's sake. We all want India to do well. I do too. I want India to, this so-called inclusion that the gentleman talked about. Yes, this is something that many, many people have fought for and have advocated. So, yes, of course we would like that. But don't use it to beat the tom-tom of propaganda for this regime who knows even less about economics than it does about communal harmony.
Okay. Dr. Paswan, respond to this critique of Mr. Desai on unemployment, GDP per capita, etc., etc.
No, I think it's very important, the observations I've been listening to since the outset. And I would like to express my gratitude, Rahulji, for bringing out a show on this very excellent, very brilliant report of Professor Shamika Ravi, who is an illustrious scholar. And this report also has study from the European Union Commission, the global human settlement layer, on which the entire observation is based. This is a longitudinal study, and like you said, the years of UPA regime and the years of NDA regime have been academically analyzed. So I think the first and foremost requirement is to remove your political or a lens of biasness that might guide you in the observation of these studies. I was listening to the gentleman before me, and I'm really surprised to see that he's making a point on communal harmony. I think in terms of data, from 2004 to 2014, that has been the most peaceful decade, sir, in terms of communal harmony. I repeat, 2004 to 2014 to 2024 has been one of the most peaceful decade in terms of communal harmony, sir. And I think this is a diversionary technique. When it comes to financial inclusion,
we don't have anything to divert.
That in 2014, I did not speak when you were speaking, sir.
Yeah,
let's have a civil debate. I think when you were speaking, no one else spoke. Thank you so much, sir. In 2014, yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. In 2014, there was untouchability in this country. Financial untouchability. We must understand. How many people had access to organized banking structure? Less than 40%. Today, the banking structure has become inclusive in a historical sense. Every single household, every single person has access to bank account. And when I say financial inclusion, it has deeper implication. Because a Congress Prime Minister has said, which we must acknowledge and we should never forget, कि दिल्ली से 1 रुपए चलता है तो गांव में 15 पैसा पहुंचता है. So when we speak of digital India, when we speak of financial inclusion, we must also acknowledge that the leakages have stopped. The transparency has come. The allocation from Delhi and the amount received in villages is same. More than 23 lakh crore has been transferred to the accounts of the poor, the marginalized section. This is beyond my comprehension. You're bringing communal harmony. We can have a separate debate on communal harmony. But for God's sake, when it comes to economy, only today, this morning, I was going through the interview of the RBI governor, and he has categorically said that we are set to exceed the 7.6% growth for the current year.
Let me just step in. Viewers, this is almost an unending conversation because people will cherry pick the data, they'll extrapolate from it. But what we showed you was data that was collected from an unbiased lens, the lens of a European space agency that has supplied what is known as high frequency data to the government. The government has put it out there for all of you to see, and We brought that in the first part. It's up to you now to make the judgment call. I leave it at this.